Which players should you be targeting on your Dynasty waiver wire this week? We're talking about that and more on today's episode of Locked On Dynasty.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Matt Williamson and Ryan McDowell.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jacemedical.com. That's Jase medical.com. I'm your host, Ryan McDowell. You can follow me on Twitter at RyanMC23. Joining me, as always, is former NFL scout Matt Williamson. Find Matt on Twitter at WilliamsonNFL. Matt, we are 10 weeks into the season now. It is a Tuesday, and we're talking some Dynasty transactions. We got a few interesting names here, though. A few interesting names following week 10. So let's jump right into it.
All right.
We talk every week, Matt, about the injuries, and finally, it feels like they weren't that bad this week. We still had a couple. We'll start there. Alexander Mattison apparently suffered a concussion, and we know that means he is in danger of missing next week as well. That's kind of the story of concussions this season, that typically means you're not going to be available next week for your team. Ty Chandler stepped in, and of course we talked about Chandler last week as a waiver target, but more as a preemptive just in case following the Cam Akers injury. Now, if Chandler's still sitting out on your waiver wire, a little bit more of a priority, I would say, this week. He ended up with 15 carries, 45 yards, and a touchdown. Chandler could certainly be the starter next week in week 11 as the Vikings potentially are missing Alexander Mattison. Kene Nwangu is possibly the backup next week. What do you think about these guys?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about those in a minute, but I just want to throw this out there too, that
Yep.
Not only did we not get hit super hard with fantasy injuries this past week, which was nice, but we actually got Kyler Murray back. Maybe we're going to get Justin Fields, maybe Stafford's on the horizon, Justin Jefferson, speaking of Minnesota. So actually we're adding to the pool as opposed to greatly siphoning from it. So I think that's intriguing. And there was a lot of points scored this weekend. So it was a good fantasy week all in all.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. James Conner, another guy we got back on the field. And I was kind of having a back and forth about a trade that someone on Twitter was potentially looking to make, and essentially saying, that, I'm ready to make this playoff run, but I feel like I'm one player short. Should I make a move for Austin Eckler or Alvin Kamara or one of these veterans? And I was looking at the team, and there on the injured reserve list is Devon Achane. And, it feels like getting those guys back. You might feel like you need to make a trade. We're going to talk about some possible trade targets later in the show. You might feel like you need to make a trade to get that boost for the fantasy playoffs that are coming up so quickly. But if you've got Justin Jefferson, Achane, one of those names you mentioned, you're going to get that boost. Not to say you shouldn't make any trades, but
of course, right.
That's really going to bolster some lineups coming soon. Ty Chandler, what do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I'm a big fan. This was like my favorite last round pick in redraft. I mean, that was before Akers was there. I thought he was very impressive in the preseason. I think he's an explosive player. I thought he should have gone a round or two higher than he did in the NFL draft, but running backs fall, as we know. And frankly, I've never been super impressed with Mattison. So, when that was, Labor Day weekend, I thought Chandler had a chance to even surpass Mattison as the one. And that didn't happen. And then Akers gets traded for, and Chandler gets dropped in a lot of places, and people get tired of it. But I'm really impressed with the Vikings overall. I mean, I think
You are
here, I think is a possibility for Minnesota. What they're doing with Dobbs is tremendous. Jefferson's coming back on the horizon. Vastly underrated offensive line, great pair of tackles. So I think that's a thriving environment for a new running back to get plopped in there. And I would expect Chandler starts this week, and I think he'll timeshare from then on.
I like the sound of that. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely a potential that could be a short-term waiver move. But as I said, we were already looking at Chandler as an option. The Vikings do play the Denver Broncos next week. So if it's Chandler that is the starter, you'll probably want him not only on your team off the waiver wire, but maybe even in your fantasy starting lineup as well. The Bengals, interesting team here. Really a disappointing loss on Sunday as the Texans came back once again. That was a fun game to watch, but around my area, a lot of Bengals fans, and I'm
trouble,
not one
man.
of them, but I could kind of feel their pain a little bit. T. Higgins missed that game. Trent Irwin stepped in, played pretty well, had the touchdown to start the game, ended up with a couple catches, 54 yards, and a score. And Irv Smith, honestly, has just struggled this season. The Bengals have tried a lot of different options at the tight end position. Tanner Hudson is the newest one, and didn't have a huge stat line, but certainly saw a ton of targets. 7 targets, caught 6 of them for 33 yards. If you're in the tight end premium league, those catches piling up like that are a big deal. The Bengals do play in on Thursday night this week. Unfortunately for the Bengals, maybe, and for their fantasy managers as well, they play the Baltimore Ravens. So I don't know. This is definitely not a matchup we want to chase, but it sounds like T. Higgins is going to be out again for that game. So both Irwin and Hudson are guys to at least consider stashing on the waiver wire, but maybe not starting this week.
So I actually think this situation is more interesting, unfortunately, for the real world than it is for fantasy or dynasty, in that the Bills and the Bengals now are in serious jeopardy of not going to the playoffs, despite how well they've played really since Burrow's gotten healthy. You know, if they lose to Baltimore, they'll be 0-3 in the division. That'll be their 5th AFC loss. And they play like the hardest schedule in the league going forward. I mean, they still have the Chiefs and all kinds of tough games. So I'm kind of avoiding this because Irwin and Hudson just don't move the needle for me.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know, I mean, I think it's a fun discussion. Boy, I'd love to see this offense with a tight end. I've thought that for a while and kind of hoped that Irv Smith, the former hot young tight end, could be that guy. It sure doesn't seem like he is. And I think the other thing you have to unpeel with this situation is, will Higgins even be back? You know, could an Irwin or the dude from Princeton be the Higgins successor next year? I kind of lean towards no. So they're not a great short-term fit. I don't know that they're a long-term fit, and it's a tough week opponent this week as well.
Yeah, that's all very fair. Irwin was a popular DFS target this past week. And
now you're talking,
I actually scooped him up and started him in a league where you know, believe it or not, my team is not very good based on the fact that I started Trent Irwin. But it worked out well. But yeah, you make a good point. Baltimore defense, not one we want to face, and Irwin, Hudson, probably not long-term options. So more of a desperation play there. A couple other guys to throw out quickly. Jaylen Gon, a name we hadn't heard much from this season. Of course, the Chargers continue to deal with injuries to their receiving core. Guyton had a solid game, 4 catches, 41 yards, and a touchdown. Of course, Josh Palmer still on the injured reserve. Now Keenan Allen is banged up. He had a monster game on Sunday. Guyton, again, a little bit of a desperation play, but also one of these guys that we want a piece of that offense. As bad as the Chargers have been, again, on the field in real life, they do continue to put up fantasy points. So Guyton, not a bad option. Matt, before we wrap up the waiver talk, I got to get your thoughts on what we saw in New England, or in Frankfurt, Germany, I should say. Once again, Mac Jones pulled from the game late in the game for Bailey Zappi. I think going back over the past year and a half, last season and this season, that is either the fourth or fifth time that has happened, that Mac Jones has been benched late in the game in favor of Zappi. And we get the quotes from Belichick following the game and on Monday, essentially saying he's evaluating everything. And I know Belichick is being evaluated as well. This is an ugly situation.
Really ugly situation, like potentially first overall pick in the draft situation. Although I don't know if the Giants will ever score another point or win another game. They're rather horrendous, but Patriots aren't all that much better. I don't have great takeaways. I mean, I think Mac Jones, I've never been a fan. I mean, I would not have used the first round pick on him. I don't think he's a natural playmaker, but if he were Miami's quarterback or the Niners quarterback, I think he'd be just fine. I think he's in an impossible to succeed situation. He needs to get out. They need to find something different. This seems like it's getting almost toxic. But in a really cheap super flex move, I might grab Mac Jones and hope he lands somewhere, Atlanta or New Orleans or, somewhere there is a chance to at least get out. I mean, I think he's a good processor. He's accurate, but he's a mess right now.
Yeah, I don't mind a buy low on Mac Jones either. Certainly will be cheap. As far as the rest of this season, I mean, we'll see what happens the rest of this week as we kind of await these decisions. I would say Zappi is kind of similar to what we said about Tommy DeVito last week. I mean, in a super flex league, you've got to roster him, but I can't imagine ever starting him. So maybe that means that he's just a roster clogger. That's certainly what we've seen from DeVito so far. Matt, we're going to have some conversation next about the some trade targets based on the rest of season schedule. We did this a few weeks ago, had some good names, and we're going to do that again, and we'll do that right after this.
So Ryan mentioned the Jace case to start the show, and it's something that my family, especially my wife, is really happy we have, because we go to this YMCA camp that's in the middle of nowhere, and if something were to happen to our kids or friends there or whatever, we'd be in a lot better shape with the Jace case and all the antibiotics and the thing that they offer there. So I highly, recommend looking into that. So whether you're on extended travel or bracing for a major weather event or limited by yet another supply shortage, you are covered. Thanks to our partners at Jace Medical, life-saving antibiotics and a long list of daily medications can be ordered on a 1-year supply. I mean, even ED generics like Cialis, Viagra, and Rivado prescriptions. So go online right now to jacemedical.com to receive your 12-month supply on your daily medication. So make sure to use our promo code Locked On at checkout. Get a discount with that, of course. A verified customer had this to say about Jace. I'm thankful for this service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut pills in half to have it. I ordered most of my daily meds with a year supply. I also ordered the antibiotic kit. I feel secure now. Prices are lower than local pharmacies. I highly recommend this for everyone. So if you or someone you love would love to get some peace of mind by having a year supply of any daily med, go to jacemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. Remember to use our promo code Locked On and you get $20 off your purchase. Thanks.
Football season is here, and Locked On is kicking up our coverage with Locked On NFL Kickoff Live. Every Friday, Locked On will go live at 2 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On NFL YouTube channel. Host Tanitra Batiste, Jarvis Davis, and Kyle Krabs will break down every game on the NFL slate to get you ready for your team's matchup, your fantasy lineups, your betting angles, and more. Plus, get the in-depth local analysis from our stable of NFL hosts across the country who know their teams better than anyone else. Find Locked On NFL Kickoff Live every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern on any Locked On NFL YouTube channel. All right, Matt, we talked about the trade deadlines in Dynasty leagues last week. And those, again, are coming up soon if they happen in your league. So it's time once again to look at some trade targets for the remainder of the season. And went back to our buddies at Fantasy Pros. They release an updated weekly strength of schedule tool. And again, this is just looking at the remaining games. And these are the players that got a 5-star strength of schedule. Let's start at the quarterback position. Joshua Dobbs, the Minnesota Vikings. Man, what a story Josh Dobbs is. Matt, he's a fun one. I've seen some comparisons. I've made some comparisons to Geno Smith, kind of this year's version of Geno Smith. What do you think about Dobbs moving forward?
He scares me.
Okay.
I'm rooting for him to no end. I mean, I know a lot of Steeler people that know him and great respect and love him and think he's smart and a great human being and all that stuff. And this is a tremendous story. And I said earlier that O'Connell should certainly be near the top of the list, if not the top of the list for Coach of the Year, and all the good Viking stuff I said. And I think the playoffs are very real. I just think that the league has already sort of spoken on him, unfortunately. When you get traded 3 times in a month or 5 teams in a year or whatever it is, I think you quickly realize, yes, we love you, just as the Steelers did way back when, but you have a very low ceiling. I think he's got a high floor and a low ceiling, and that's great whenever you lose Kirk Cousins and don't have a fallback plan. But I don't think he can get the Geno start every week, take over a team as a starter next year situation to me.
So it sounds like you don't have that long-term confidence in him. What about just the rest of the season? No, not so much.
Superflex, I think he's very startable, so he has value, so I don't think he'll lose this job. He's not going to get traded again, obviously, so that part's good. He's the leader of a good offense, and he runs, so that's great. But I think he's Ryan Fitzpatrick more than he is new Geno Smith, maybe.
Okay. Some recent trades involving Joshua Dobbs. These are all super flex trades. Dobbs for a 2nd rounder. Saw that one a few times in the trade finder at dynastyleaguefootball.com. Dobbs for Kyron Williams. That's another player. You're talking about some players getting back on the field soon. Sounds like Kyron Williams will be back for the Rams soon. And then Josh Dobbs for McLaughlin, the Denver rookie running back. Demario Douglas, another rookie for New England, and Dawson Knox. I certainly want Dobbs over that collection of players.
Yes, all those spare parts. Yeah, they're okay.
Yeah. I want Dobbs over the 2nd. I'm willing to pay a 2nd if I need that 2nd starter in a super flex league. Kyron Williams a little bit closer, but you can make an argument. So Dobbs certainly not an expensive target, and again has a great schedule based on our friends over at Fantasy Pros. Another quarterback with a 5-star schedule for the remainder of the season is Jared Goff. Matt, he's going to be a little more expensive. Sure. Jared Goff for Kenny Pickett and Rashid Shaheed.
Goff.
Yeah, Goff pretty easily there. The other 2 trades are tougher, I think. Goff and a 3rd rounder for a 1st, and Goff for Deshaun Watson. I just don't think I could pay a 1st for Jared Goff at this point. I would have a hard time clicking accept on that one.
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson, I get it. He's been okay. Banged up again now following Sunday's game. Goff certainly feels a lot safer than Watson, and he's shown, at least this year, has shown a higher upside. I'm good with making that deal for Jared Goff as well.
I agree with all that. I will throw in, it's only one half of football, but the second half, even post-injury against the Ravens, in my opinion, was his best play in a Browns uniform. So
Yep.
maybe, I mean, again, he was 14 for 14 the second half. Great. But I've seen so much bad that I think I'll take my chances on Goff. Last note, I hope no one is worried about, Hendon Hooker looming there in the Lions room. I mean, Goff, I think, is the guy here, at least for the next couple of years.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've got some running backs and wide receivers with 5-star schedules as well that you may want to consider trading for if your dynasty team is a contender. We'll continue this conversation next.
Score early in this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. It's the only place I go, honestly. It's the best one out there. There's no doubt that it's America's #1 sportsbook. So right now, new customers get a $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. So frankly, you could have bet the Cowboys money line against the awful Giants team for $5, and boom, $150 goes right in your account. How about that? $150 if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is incredibly easy to use. Trust me. There's a wide range of betting options, spreads, player props, over-unders, more, way more. I mean, there's all kinds of awards and things like that. You can bet on who's going to win the division, stuff like that. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
We are talking trade targets. This is based on the rest of season strength of schedule from the folks over at Fantasy Pros. Matt, we talked about Jared Goff and Joshua Dobbs at the quarterback position. This is just how it worked out. We've got a cheaper option and a more expensive option at each position. Let's start with the expensive running back. It's Breece Hall, and schedule or great schedule or terrible schedule. Breece Hall is a guy we want to have on our dynasty rosters for sure. Obviously, he's going to be quite expensive. Some recent deals from the trade finder at DLF, Breece Hall and Cade Otton for Bijan Robinson and Daniel Bellinger. The tight ends are essentially throw-ins here.
Yeah.
This is Breece for Bijan.
I'm still going Bijan.
I'm still going Bijan too, but I would say Breece is closing that gap.
Mm-hmm. I think I'd rather Breece for the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's fair. So if you're a strong contender, would you make that move right now? Just to pivot to Breece? No, you're keeping Bijan. I am as well. So essentially that means they're still in different tiers for us.
Yeah. Plus Bijan just got a nice workload. Maybe Arthur Smith is waking up a little bit on that. I hesitate to say that, but who knows?
Breece Hall on a 3rd rounder for T. Higgins and DeAndre Swift. Breece for Higgins and Swift.
I think I'll take the Breece side.
I think I will as well, but it's
a good deal.
That's a close one. That is a close one. I like that deal. Very, very good deal, whoever pulled that off. I can see both sides of it. And lastly, a couple teammates getting traded for one another here. Breece Hall for Garrett Wilson.
I still want the receiver.
I still want the receiver too. I'm hesitant to say that. We know the situation there with the Jets. Zach Wilson gets another vote of confidence from his coaching staff. I don't know. Isaiah Pacheco.
I just know you well enough. If we had a dynasty startup today, you would take Wilson over Breece.
Yeah, you're right.
Yep.
Isaiah Pacheco, a little bit cheaper. I saw him go for a 2nd rounder. Also saw him go for a 1st rounder. I would gladly pay a 2nd, and there's no way I would pay a 1st round rookie pick for Isaiah Pacheco, but hey, somebody out there did. What about this one? Isaiah Pacheco for Sam Laporta.
No chance. I want Laporta.
No chance.
I want Laporta there. No matter what my structure of my team is, no chance.
Yeah, I thought Pacheco would be a little cheaper, and I like that second round pick for him. I like that deal, but maybe he's more expensive than I thought. Couple of wide receivers, very quickly. We mentioned that name, Demario Douglas. He's got a 5-star schedule the rest of the season. Tough to figure out what's happening there.
He's
in
got
New
a
England.
1-star offense, though.
Right.
Quarterback and everything else. Situation.
Yeah, I don't mind investing in Demario Douglas. He's pretty clearly the top target in that offense right now, but you're right. It's tough to use any of these Patriots. The good news is he is still very cheap. Douglas for a 4th rounder. Douglas and a 4th.
I think you do that. Yeah.
Right. Douglas and a 4th for a 3rd. Douglas and a 4th for Chig Okonkwo. I'm paying that price for Demario Douglas in every league I can, plugging him in as my wide receiver 3 or my flex, and feeling pretty good about the 12 points he's going to get me.
Yeah, I mean, I would give you 2/3 for Douglas right now.
Yeah, totally agree. Last one, this guy won't be easy to acquire based on the run that he is on right now. CD Lamb and the Dallas Cowboys have a 5-star schedule remaining. And he is pricey based on the trade finder. Honestly, though, not even as expensive as I thought he might be. CD Lamb and a 2nd rounder for Bijan Robinson and a 3rd.
I went the
I'll take CD Lamb here.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought we might disagree on that one. CD Lamb and a 2nd once again for Kyron Williams and 2 first rounders. Let's say Kyron's worth a 2nd. So this is Lamb for 2 firsts.
Lamb,
yeah, agree.
He's awesome.
CD Lamb, this one's pretty easy. CD Lamb for Zach Charbonnet, Tyjae Spears, and a 2nd round pick.
Lamb,
we like those. Yeah, we like those rookie running backs, but this one is not close at all. Give me CD Lamb. Man, maybe I should make some offers for CD Lamb.
Offers out here. We're stop recording.
That's cheaper than I expected. If you want to go bargain hunting, Brandon Cooks, maybe even Michael Gallup could benefit from that same 5-star schedule for the rest of the season. Yeah. Those are just some trade targets. Yep. Those are good. Some trade targets to consider if you have a contending dynasty team, especially if your trade deadline is coming up soon. Hopefully it's not. Hopefully you don't even have one. But if you do, think about those players. That's going to do it for today's show. Please make sure you download and subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Remember to follow the show at Locked On Dynasty. Follow Matt at Williamson NFL. And I'm Ryan, MC23. We'll be back next time with more Locked On Dynasty.